Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. Today, we are sitting down with absolute royalty. For those who may somehow not know who you are, who are you?
I am Robert the Bruce, or King Robert I of Scotland. I was a leader, a warrior, and a man who dedicated his life to securing the independence of the Scottish people.
It is an honour to have you here. Let's go back to the very beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born on July 11th, 1274. History often points to Turnberry Castle in Ayrshire as my birthplace, which was the stronghold of my mother's family.
Brilliant. And what was your given name at birth?
My birth name was Robert de Bruce.
Is there a story behind your birth name?
Indeed, the name belongs to a long line of Anglo-Norman nobility. Our ancestors came over from Normandy to England with William the Conqueror back in 1066, and later generations established deep roots in Scotland. Almost all the eldest males in our line were named Robert, which I know causes a fair bit of confusion for modern historians.
I can imagine. Keeping all those Roberts straight must be a nightmare. What was your hometown like growing up?
Growing up around Turnberry in the lands of Carrick was a beautiful but rugged experience. It was a landscape of dramatic cliffs, sea views, and rolling hills. It was a place deeply tied to the ancient Celtic traditions of my mother's side of the family.
Sounds breathtaking. What was your family life like?
My family was powerful, aristocratic, and fiercely ambitious. My father was the 6th Lord of Annandale, and my mother, Marjorie, was the Countess of Carrick, a formidable woman who actually held my father captive until he agreed to marry her. We were constantly navigating the complex, high-stakes world of medieval politics and feudal loyalties.
Wow, your mother sounds legendary. What kind of kid were you?
I was a very disciplined and studious boy, as was required of my station. I was raised to be trilingual, learning Norman French, Gaelic, and Scots, along with Latin for courtly and religious duties. I was heavily trained in diplomacy, literature, courtly manners, and of course, the art of warfare.
What were your biggest fears growing up?
Growing up in the medieval feudal system, the greatest fear was always instability and the ruin of your family's house. The political landscape could shift in an instant, and a single misstep could mean losing your lands, your titles, or your life.
The stakes were definitely high back then. What did you dream of becoming as a child?
From my earliest days, I was raised with the understanding that my family had a legitimate claim to the Scottish crown. My dream and the expectation placed upon me was to fulfill that destiny and defend our ancestral right.
What were some of your favorite activities in school?
We did not have schools in the way you do now, but rather private tutoring. I excelled in languages, reading historical charters, and the physical arts of chivalry, such as riding, hunting, and practicing with the sword and lance.
Sounds like true knight training. What was your first job?
My first official duty on the historical record was serving as a witness to a land charter alongside my father when I was just a teenager. Shortly after, around the age of 16, I was knighted and began handling the political and military interests of the Bruce dynasty.
Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
It became entirely clear to me when King Alexander III died in 1286 without a direct heir, leaving Scotland in political turmoil. Seeing my grandfather step forward as one of the primary competitors for the crown made me realize exactly how heavy my family's legacy truly was.
That is a lot of pressure for a young man. What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
Early on in the conflict, my family actually swore fealty to King Edward I of England to preserve our lands. At the time, it seemed like a standard tactical political move to survive the immediate threat, but it set off a long chain of shifting alliances that ultimately forced me to choose between English loyalty and Scottish independence.
What was your biggest break?
It came in 1307, after Edward I marched north to crush my rebellion, but died just short of the Scottish border. His son, Edward II, was a much less formidable adversary, which gave me the crucial opportunity to consolidate my power and launch a successful guerrilla campaign.
Talk about a turning point. What were your biggest struggles before success?
Oh, there were many. My early reign was disastrous. I was defeated at the Battle of Methven in 1306, driven into hiding as an outlaw king, and forced to flee, likely to the remote islands or Ireland. My brothers were executed, and my wife and daughter were captured by the English.
Did you ever consider quitting?
There is a famous legend told about my time in hiding, where I watched a spider in a cave trying over and over again to fix its web. It failed 6 times, but succeeded on the 7th. Watching that tiny creature inspired me to keep fighting. Whether literal or symbolic, that spirit was true. Giving up was never an option.
That spider story is classic. Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel are essential to your success?
Rising before the dawn, attending morning prayers, and maintaining absolute physical fitness through daily training. As a commander, being out in the elements alongside my men, eating what they ate, and enduring the same hardships was essential to maintaining their loyalty.
Lead by example. I love it. What job would you have had if fame never happened?
If I had not been thrust into the royal spotlight, I likely would have lived out my days as a wealthy feudal lord, managing the estates of Annandale and Carrick, hunting in the forests, and overseeing local courts.
What was your life like before fame?
It was a whirlwind of court politics, marriages, and managing vast properties across both Scotland and England. It was comfortable, but always overshadowed by the looming threat of war.
How did relationships change after success?
Success in medieval politics is a double-edged sword. Winning battles brought the Scottish clergy and nobility to my side, but it also solidified deep, bitter rivalries with Scottish families who opposed my claim, particularly the Comyns.
Did fame bring happiness?
Happiness is a luxury for a king. What success brought was a sense of profound duty fulfilled, and a quiet pride in seeing Scotland recognized as an independent nation.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
The sheer burden of leadership. Every victory came at the cost of lives, and the constant stress of warfare took a heavy toll on my health and my family.
What misconceptions did people have about you?
People often look at my early career and see a man who switched allegiances between the English and Scottish multiple times, viewing it as a lack of patriotism. In reality, every move I made was a calculated effort to protect my people, my family, and our claim to the throne during an incredibly chaotic time.
Context is everything. What was your darkest moment?
The year 1306. I had just killed my rival, John the Red Comyn, inside a church during an argument, an act that got me excommunicated. Immediately after, my army was shattered, my family was imprisoned, and I was running for my life in the wilderness. Everything seemed utterly lost.
What past regrets did you carry that you spoke about?
The slaying of John Comyn on holy ground at the high altar of Greyfriars Church always weighed heavily on my conscience. It was a sacrilegious act born of hot blood, and I sought penance for it for the rest of my days.
What's something people misunderstood about your life?
Many assume that the fight for Scotland's freedom was an easy, unified march. They don't realize that it was just as much a brutal civil war between rival Scottish factions as it was a war against English rule.
Tell me about a time when everything went wrong and how did you handle it?
At the Battle of Methven, we were caught entirely unprepared by a surprise night attack by the English. Instead of panic, I gathered the few men I had left, retreated into the hills, and completely changed our strategy from open field warfare to hit-and-run guerrilla tactics.
Classic pivot. Did fame and fortune change your life?
It took me from a wealthy nobleman to a warrior king who often slept on the cold ground. It replaced physical luxury with historical responsibility.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
My grandfather, Robert the Competitor, who instilled in me the fierce belief in our family's right to the throne, and the brave men and women of Scotland who risked everything to fight by my side.
What was life like in your final years?
My final years were spent at my estate in Cardross. After decades of war, I finally saw the English officially recognize Scotland's independence in the Treaty of Northampton. I was able to enjoy a period of peace, though my physical health was failing rapidly.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
I was focused on securing the future of the kingdom, ensuring a peaceful succession for my young son David, and planning for a crusade that I would, unfortunately, never be able to take.
When and where and how did you pass away, and how old were you?
I passed away on June 7, 1329, at my home in Cardross, Dumbartonshire. I was 54 years old. I had been suffering from a severe, debilitating illness, which some chroniclers of the time suggested was leprosy, though the exact nature of it remains a historical mystery.
What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
Because I could not go on a crusade myself, I requested that my heart be removed after my death and carried into battle against the enemies of Christ. My loyal friend Sir James Douglas carried it in a silver casket into battle in Spain. It was later returned to Scotland and buried at Melrose Abbey, while my body rests at Dunfermline Abbey.
That is incredibly intense. What's the craziest rumor ever told about you?
During the height of our guerrilla campaigns, the English propagated rumors that I was practicing witchcraft or using dark magic because my forces seemed to appear out of nowhere in the mist, strike, and vanish without a trace. It wasn't magic, just good strategy.
What was your most unique habit?
I had a habit of reading aloud to my men from old romantic tales and histories while we were retreating or crossing difficult terrain, just to keep their spirits high and distract them from their exhaustion.
What a fantastic leader. What was your favorite food?
When we were on the campaign trail, we lived off the land. Simple, roasted wild game like venison or wild boar, accompanied by basic oats and whatever fish we could catch in the rivers, was always the most satisfying meal after a long day.
Did you have a favorite restaurant?
We did not have restaurants in the 14th century. My favorite place to dine was at the high table in the Great Hall of Turnberry Castle, surrounded by my closest allies and kin.
Fair point. What was your favorite book?
I was very fond of the old French romances, particularly the stories of Charlemagne and the Alexander Romance. Tales of great kings and heroic deeds always fascinated me.
Did you have any known rivalries?
My most bitter rivalry was with John Comyn and his entire clan. That blood feud dictated the first half of my reign and divided the nation.
Tell us a story nobody talks about.
Just before the famous Battle of Bannockburn, an English knight named Sir Henry de Bohun spotted me riding a small pony, isolated from my main force. He lowered his lance and charged directly at me on his heavy warhorse. Instead of fleeing, I stood my ground, stepped my pony aside at the very last second, stood up in my stirrups, and split his helmet in two with my battle axe. My only complaint afterward was that I broke the shaft of my favorite axe.
That is legendary. What's your funniest behind-the-scenes moment?
During our days hiding in the hills, we had to cross a loch using a tiny leaked boat that could only hold 2 or 3 men at a time. It took nearly a whole day to get everyone across, and we spent the entire time laughing at how ridiculous the mighty army of Scotland looked rowing back and forth in a toy boat.
Did you ever prank someone?
In war, our pranks were tactical deceptions. We once captured a castle by having our men disguise themselves as local peasants driving cattle, hiding their weapons until they were completely inside the gates. The garrison was entirely fooled.
What was the most outlandish purchase you made?
Building a magnificent royal tomb for myself made of imported Italian marble from Paris to ensure that the final resting place of the King of Scots reflected the dignity of the independent nation we fought so hard to build.
Absolutely fitting. What advice would you give people chasing success?
Never be deterred by early failures. If a tiny spider has the patience to try again and again until it succeeds, then a human being, fueled by a righteous cause, can overcome any obstacle.
Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories they shared that you would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
Only that freedom is a precious thing, fought for with the blood and sacrifice of many. Cherish your history, stand firm in your convictions, and never forget where you came from. Thank you, Calvin, for having me on the show to share my story.
Thank you so much for being here, Your Grace. What an incredible journey through Scottish history. From tracking an outlaw king hiding in caves to the absolute triumph at Bannockburn, Robert the Bruce proved that persistence changes history. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.